Welcome back, everybody. We hope you had a great evening last night with the cocktail party that we had outside and whatever you guys did afterwards. We appreciate you being here. I am Thomas Hare, the Chief Content Officer of the Performance-Driven Marketing Institute. If you were in here yesterday, you probably are sick and tired of hearing that. But we are very thankful that all of you here are at PDMI West. And for our last day of conversation and educational sessions, we have a great lead-off panel conversation, fireside chat today, featuring AppsFlyer and Samsung Ads. So we're excited to get that rolling. As always, I want to say thank you to all of our event sponsors, all of our badge holders. Our educational sponsor is Blue Water, and Blue Water does have a message to share with you now.
I'm incredibly proud to be the official protein bar of NASCAR.
Are you looking for an on-the-go travel
I feel like
snack?
yourself. Life even works.
Get yours
It
today.
really works.
It's better on a Blackstone.
So again, after the session, if you want to swing into the meeting hall, you can see the Blue Water team at table 4. We are here this morning for Mythbuster, why CTV is the ultimate performance driver for mobile advertisers. And we're really excited to welcome Alex Yip from AppsFlyer and Ryan Garcia from Samsung Ads. And take it away, gentlemen.
Thank you. Good morning. To introduce myself, I'm a San Diego native, now based in New York City, so it feels great to be home. Thank you all for having me. I'm excited to talk to you guys. I'm a senior sales lead and pod lead for Samsung Ads Mobile Conversion Solutions, which is the advertising arm of Samsung Electronics. To briefly explain Samsung Ads, you can think of us in 3 ways. On the inventory side, we have, as a number 1 OEM, we have 77 million smart TVs in the US. That's in about 50 million homes. We have smart TV inventory on the home screen of those TVs. We have a number 1 fast app, free ad-supported TV called Samsung TV Plus. There's 1530s, longer form, 60s, 120s in TV Plus. On the data side, we're the number 1 ACR provider, which stands for automatic content recognition. For anyone that doesn't know, that's twice a second behind the glass. There's a fingerprint going on to understand what they're watching in linear, what kind of video games they're playing, the HDMI import, things like that to inform targeting. And then lastly, we have proprietary ML data, which we'll get into to help inform targeting and optimization. So now that I've explained myself and a little bit about us, I'll welcome Alex.
Thanks, Ryan. So my name is Alex. I lead our product strategy here in North America for AppsFlyer. If you guys aren't familiar with AppsFlyer, which you may not be, we're a measurement solution that essentially helps connect the performance of all the campaigns that you're running from a digital point of view, whether that's mobile, app, social, television, and tying that back to the conversion events itself. So fascinating enough, you may not know a lot about us, but we're actually the 3rd most prevalent SDK on phones. So essentially there's Meta, Google, and then us. So I think that's about 50% coverage globally. And so at least half of you guys in this room actually have our SDK on your phone in one of your apps.
Awesome. Very excited to have this conversation with you guys today. To tee off our session and what we're going to talk about, we're here to have an honest and open conversation about CTV and it becoming more of a performance channel for mobile advertisers. So you can think of CTV in the past, as we all know, as branding and how TV has been measured for the last few decades. Now we're getting more into mobile conversions and tying back that TV exposure into an action that happens in a mobile app, and then something that happens afterwards, like a subscription, a purchase in the phone, things along those lines. So hopefully here we'll have a very honest and open and candid conversation so you can understand these topics better and some of the things that marketers like you guys are chewing on as we move in that direction. So to kick this off, let's start with a broad starting point, Alex. CTV, as I mentioned, has been a branding vehicle for a long time. You guys are very close to the mobile advertisers. Help us understand, and these mobile advertisers are the ones that are traditionally running in TikTok, Pinterest, Snapchat, all the click-based mobile channels, right? So help us understand, what's the reality today? How are they viewing CTV?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question. I think when we think about CTV, there's 2 halves of the coin. I'm curious to know in this room right here, like, who's on the brand side versus the performance side. So like brand side, who's on the brand? Handful. And then performance side, everyone's very nice. Perfect session. So when we think about it, right, I think a lot of our customers have always been like bottom of the funnel. How did you end up driving it? Send me the last touch, last click. And then when we think about CTV, it's like, well, like how are you actually converting and driving that, right? I think when we had some early adoption, it was like QR codes, and then some of them was like calling in and getting a text message and getting all those things from a very direct response point of view. But as CTV's evolved, you know, it's not linear anymore, right? We're not like set-top boxes and everything else. We're actually getting individual impressions. You're targeting down to DMAs, you're addressing specific audiences, and we're actually collecting and getting every single impression from those actual campaigns that are running on a television. And from our integrations, we're actually seeing that you're able to connect those users from the television onto, you know, your web, onto your app, wherever that may exist, and we're helping to tie that together. So long story short is TV can still be a very brand-focused thing because, you know, 15 seconds of someone's attention, but subsequently, I think people's attentions have also shifted into video as a very natural format for everyone, and they're able to drive a decision off of that very quickly and actually say, I'm going to execute on this. I want to learn more. I want my phone in my lap and execute.
Yeah, it's great. I think one of the places you guys are headed that might be helpful for this room too is we're not all just talking about mobile conversion in-app, right? You guys are talking about omni-channel and driving things on web too. Do you want to speak a little bit maybe about some of the outcomes you're measuring, whether that's subscriptions or maybe in-app purchases, but some of these happen on mobile, some of these happen on web. How are you guys approaching omni-channel broadly?
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that historically, because TV and mobile or digital and social have kind of lived in separate sectors, we had instances where someone would show up and be like, hey, I have your pixel, I have your data, I'm sending all of my conversions to you. And what happens is every single ad network, every partner out there, every platform saying, give me all those conversions, I'll claim everything that I want. You end up getting a report that ends up claiming and duplicating all the conversions that you have. And so what happens is then you give it to some analyst in your team and they're like, I can't add it up because it doesn't make any sense. They throw some coefficient on it and then you end up with something that doesn't really add up and it's just a model and trying to make sense of it. Our goal is very different. We start with a conversion event as your core instance, and we connect across all of the ecosystems that you're working with, and therefore there is no duplication. Our stance is single source of truth is where we're really trying to get to. So when you get that conversion event, we source through all your different look-back windows for television, for mobile, for social, Meta, Google, wherever it is, and we string together all of those, and we're saying, well, this was their last touch event, but there was also, you know, this impression, that impression, that impression beforehand. And we leave it up to our customers to decide, well, how do you want to distribute that credit? Do you want to run different testing and different weights to figure out what's actually driving the most efficacy?
Awesome. So hopefully this gives you guys a little bit better look under the hood at how this works, kind of the things that we're measuring, how our integration works together. Maybe now it might make sense to zoom out a little bit. Was there a question you had for me?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting is that when you think about Samsung, you know, I think everybody's probably thinking Samsung, you guys probably do a lot of brand dollars. Why a sudden shift to performance? Is it the right performance channel? How are you guys addressing the performance marketer?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, hopefully this is probably all new learnings to you guys. I'll just unpack how Samsung Ads got to this point. We've been around for 10 years or so now. If you guys can think, I'd say most of the room can remember their first smart TV. It wasn't smart when it first started, right? It was pretty clunky. It was like, do I really want to use a smart TV OS? Linear was the primary way of watching TV. And to be honest, me in 2016, I had a hard time really seeing the future that we're at now, where bandwidth is as fast as it is. These ad units are great. Everyone's using the TV OS. So part of it is technology advanced to a point that there became an ad opportunity to monetize the smart TV operating system, and that's where users are watching all this content. That's kind of the first piece. The second is users are transacting in the living room, right? Like you can think of your own personal experience. Your phone's right there as you guys are watching TV, and commerce is getting quicker and quicker. Amazon's done a great job of making one-click, purchasing. So whether it's them or someone else, you're trying to capture what is going on in the living room. So that was, a second. And a third, more broad one that might be the most interesting for this group is marketing budgets. And they're moving around. right? So we're now competing in the space that traditionally was Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Meta, those guys. It's still very much dominated by them, but there's opportunity to get some of those performance dollars and have CTV be a part of that pie. So for all those reasons, it's an exciting time for Samsung to evolve from what has always been a brand-based offering to make a lot of these hires for performance, for mobile performance, and make new partnerships with AppsFlyer. And we're just starting to build out our ecosystem and get there. So that's a little bit why we're doing it.
No, I mean, I think who here doesn't even who watches TV without the phone on their lap, right? And if you're watching, you're probably looking for your phone while the TV's still running, right? I think it's just very natural. And when you see something, you're probably searching it if you find something interesting, and then you're on the search and you're trying to learn more about it. You're in that consideration of that funnel already. So it's very natural, the way that we kind of interact with video nowadays, that wasn't probably natural about 10 years ago. And I think it's just part of the evolution of human nature and how we're actually evolving from our habits. I mean, I would love to dive into a little bit about your use cases, right? Do you have any examples of how people are really tackling this?
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe let's continue down the road of how we got to this point. So our offering has been in market for about a year. And we started with your large gaming publishers. Think Candy Crush, Monopoly Go, so on and so forth. The ones that are Clash of Clans, those guys that are have casual games. There's a tremendous amount of data that helped power our ML. So primarily what they care about is what's referred to as day 7 ROAS. So after an install, how much you spend in-app 7 days after you have drive an install. And then they'll give us a goal, a target percentage they want us to get to. So we started working in partnership with those games. And AppsFlyer was our core partner. And the role that they play is kind of twofold. One is the actual tracking. Without getting too deep in the weeds on this, there's tracking links that, with a view-through window, help us understand when the install happened. And so we set up that integration. And then the second part of that is the attribution windows themselves and understanding how long those should be, how long it is in mobile, how long it should be in CTV. And then based off that, we get what's called a postback. And that is where our targeting and where our secret sauce gets kicked in. So think of it just as like a timestamp. And it's saying the install happened this day, this time. And we'll start looking at scale. Okay, it was these TVs in Seattle. It was at this time of day. It was baseball fans. Or it was people that are playing a lot of this kind of video game in the HDMI input. And that's where all our ML, and we call these smart audiences, it kicks in and starts to make targeting to inform what's the Venn diagram of people who play a lot of Candy Crush and have Samsung TVs. And we're trying to go after those heavy gamers in those markets, and that's where things start to go. And then we have automation that targets across different creative variations on our smart TVs or Samsung TV Plus. The last two pieces of this is pricing and then the actual performance itself. On pricing, we rolled out a fixed price CPI, so you only pay per install. And based off that, we're seeing, did that price per install translate to a target ROAS or a target subscription? And based off all of those things, with those large-scale publishers, we hovered around 150% day 7 ROAS, which was great. It was above what our target was for most of these guys. There's still a long ways to go to take share from the big social channels, but all of that is what rolled out in the last year and what has been automated.
No, I think there's a lot to unpack with what you just said. I think a lot of times people get caught up on just the conversion. You're like, okay, I got this, I got the conversion, but with what you're doing, you're also looking at the total lifetime value of that user. You're thinking about, well, they made the first purchase, but did they make subsequent purchases? Did they stay in your ecosystem? Or are they a loyal user? And then you're backing that into the actual campaign budget, and you're saying, well, I paid a lot, but did I get a lot back in the longer scheme of things, right? And I think that's important to kind of factor in versus just looking at one transaction as kind of what you're basing everything off of. Totally. I think in addition to that, I'm kind of curious because you mentioned a little bit about targeting and audiences. I think in television, a lot of people are used to well, I'm doing age, I'm doing gender, I'm doing a specific DMA, but you also mentioned cost per. How are you balancing that? Traditional buyers are probably thinking about how to target these existing customers, but performance advertisers are at the bottom of the line. You're saying, how did I pay and what did I get in return? What's Samsung's take on that?
For sure. And to unpack my career a bit, I started in linear TV for what was then Viacom, now Paramount. And so I in my lifetime, I've seen it go from, age, gender, and that being the primary way that you ran on TV itself, to now we're essentially, and not just us, Meta and Google and a lot of the other tech companies are saying we will use data at scale to inform your targeting, because there's so much data points that you can use with AI and ML now to inform targeting. It is challenging. I'll be candid with you guys. For a lot of advertisers, they have their ways of approaching these things, but when you walk them through all the data points that we get, we have 300 different data points from our TVs are smart devices just like your phones are. There's over and we also get mobile data from our IP addresses. So we understand things like, how fast is the Wi-Fi speed? Does this household download a lot of games or certain kind of apps? Have they done it recently? What is the performance been like in this TV? Do they spend a lot of time on the home screen? Do they spend more time in TV Plus? There's all kinds of signals that you can use. And when you start to unpack in a few ways all the different data points that these TVs have, then they get excited. But ultimately, really what these guys care about is just what the spreadsheet tells them. And so you sometimes can try things the traditional way and target baseball fans or target the usual, kind of pieces, but we're all really much more than that now, right? Like we're more than moms or dads, we're more than certain sports fans. There's probably all kinds of shows that we watch that our friends might not know we watch, or we don't say that we watch them, but we watch them. And so it's the same way like Instagram's been able to provide such good targeting, right? All those data points they get. We're never going to quite be as much as social has, but hopefully if you don't have kids, you're not getting diaper ads, or vice versa. You're getting things that you're more in market for. So when you explain all those reasons why and what the end benefit is, then you get a little more buy-in to try smart audiences, and they understand the value of it.
Yeah, trust the system, and you guys are offering CPI, right? So you can trust the system. It's literally going to ask you what you're willing to pay for, and you're able to execute against it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get back to AppsFlyer for a second. I think one of the things that's really interesting is along the lines of working with your advertisers. Different ones have different ways of thinking for this. How do you make these campaigns as effective as possible with these advertisers? Is there a secret sauce that advertisers need to work on with AppsFlyer to help enable the best possible attribution and measurement, or how do you guys think about it?
Yeah, I would put two emphases and maybe a third one as kind of like what our value proposition in the ecosystem is, right? Most of the campaigns that we're dealing with, most of the times they're programmatically purchased, right? You're gonna put it into one system, it's gonna get you the reach that you're looking for. But in addition to that, all these campaign management tools or DSPs that you're leveraging, it's all automated, it's all optimized. And what happens is it's critical that they're getting those signals. I don't know which platforms you're currently with, they're probably asking you for a conversion API and sending every single conversion piped into that. And then a lot of times the data gets lost in there. They send you some report afterwards and they're saying the campaign's getting optimized or building out lookalikes. We actually have very unique relationships with all these different ad networks out there that are asking for these conversion APIs, where we've actually developed two-way streets with them. And what happens is we're actually able to collect that data back from them, where it's not just a black box with all these different partners. And you're actually able to extract and understand that from a measurement point of view. So it's critical that they're getting all these conversions. Your team's not developing all these pipes in place. And what happens is you actually should be seeing your cost per whatever you're looking to optimize against automatically get optimized, free-flowing. And that is critical in driving performance, especially when you're thinking about big data and thinking about how this plays out. And then on the flip side is that all the data that's coming back into our system is giving you the insights to action against them. So whatever measurement tactics that you're leveraging, you're gonna be collecting that information and being able to make those budget decisions on should I be shifting budgets here? Should I be speaking with my rep here? And the third piece, which is a completely separate session in itself, is just our AI offering. I'm able to enable our customers to be making better decisions by being able to extract that data through our MCP servers, as well as our ad fraud suite that uses AI. Our SDK footprint is the third largest in the world. We're able to collect a lot of different data that prevents you from that big concern of I'm trying this new ad network. Is it really true that this is actually working? Should I be trusting it? And is there a fraud protection that gives me the trust to go out, try new platforms, and ensure that I'm not spending a lot of money when they're just kind of stealing from everywhere else? So I think there's a lot of components in this that we're trying to offer to ensure that our customers have the right insights to empower them to make the right decisions and ultimately drive better marketing performance.
Yeah, that's great. So as you guys can tell, there's a lot of complexity that goes into measurement and just having the best possible setup before you get started. Now, the second edge of this coin is measurement standards, which I'm sure a lot of us can appreciate in this room. And I can tell you on the sales side is where a lot of these battles are won and lost in trying to get advertisers to adapt maybe for CTV. So to unpack this next question for a second, we're in a last click attribution world, which is challenging for CTV because generally click-based channels are what you call deterministic, and those are prioritized over the view through. And a lot of the credit goes to Meta, Google, the tried and true channels. So we're often having to talk to our advertisers. One, it could be a longer attribution window. It could be maybe a college application that doesn't happen right then and there, right? Or it could be a subscription that maybe they don't buy immediately, then they saw the CTV ad and it did play a role. So we're still in the early innings of kind of evolving our measurement capabilities, but I'm curious, how do you approach these conversations where the conversion window might be a little bit longer? Where's AppsFlyer on this topic?
Yeah, measurement's always a tricky question, and I think every company has their own beliefs on how they want to approach it. I would say that they kind of fall into three separate buckets, and most companies are probably leveraging at least 2 out of the 3, or really should be leveraging at least 2 out of the 3. Attribution, obviously, is a critical one that's going to give you real-time data that's going to help you decide. What Ryan's mentioned is that it's critical to start looking at a multi-touch point of view and the user journey flows themselves to understand that, is it just TV and then a bunch of search? And is search just the flow because you see something, you couldn't scan the QR code fast enough, so you just do a Google search, right? And is that really getting the credit, or was it the CTV thing that just happened right beforehand that really is driving the effectiveness of it? So there's that component of it, which is more of a multi-touch kind of journey that you're trying to understand. And then there's also just incrementality testing, right? So are you really going to shift more budget to Google search in this example, or are you going to shift more to the Samsung or another CTV platform? Because it's incrementally driving up more of the efficacy, right? So I think, you got the real time, you got the testing, and testing is obviously not in real time. You're going to have to run campaigns, batch that up, make sense of it. And then the other one is MMM, right? I mean, you can use MMM. It's obviously going to take a lot longer, and you're not going to be making real-time decisions against that, but it is going to give you a better picture at a much larger date range to understand, well, is everything working out for you? But I think from our point of view, we have all the individual signals that will ultimately be fed into incrementality or MMM. And I think that's going to help you power and make a better decision across the board.
Yeah, that's great. So to give you guys a little bit of color on how this kind of plays out with advertisers, you think of a few different use cases. I'd say it can be your digital-first challenger brand. This could be, again, like a meal subscription service or any of those kind of fun, kind of startup-type brands. And they're built off Instagram. They're built off YouTube. And eventually, you reach saturation. Right, where $1 in is no longer $1 out, and then they're trying things like us or other OEMs, and then you're having that conversation on how, we should not be competing with your marketing mix shouldn't compete with each other, but you're having to educate those buyers that eventually you need to evolve and you need to add new channels, and you don't want to look at the CPIs and the end outcomes with each new channel that you add. So that could be one. The other is your legacy brands that have been around for a long time, and they're just starting to look at, maybe it's a DR, typical from linear, right? That they have as an outcome, and then they bring that standard or that CPA to us. Overall, all the things that Alex got into are ways at looking this more holistically, but it is a challenge still, and not wanting your marketing mix to compete with each other and find a way for them all to kind of play. And also to give you guys another data point on this for kind of where we're at in the innings of this conversation that we're having. So there's another event that happens, MAU's what, I think May? And it's, for those that haven't been, it's the largest mobile marketing event of the year. It's in Vegas. And I spent a lot of time there talking to marketers to understand, what does your mix look like, relative to the tried and true players I've been talking about today, the mobile guys, and then CTV. There's us, there's Vibe, TV Scientific, a couple other startups that are doing this. There's Moloco. And the answer I kept on hearing over and over again is 90 to 95% is still in those mobile because of the last touch world that we're in and these kind of measurement challenges. So it's in a really exciting time because there's a realization that mix isn't sustainable. You can't give 95% of your dollars to Google and Meta forever. You need to evolve, and so we'll see that move over to CTV in time, and we need to evolve our way of measuring to get there. But that's just to give you guys a sense of kind of where we're at. Even though this stuff's been talked about for a while, I'm sure you guys have heard CTV being performance driven. For the dollars are, it's still relatively early. So hopefully that's a helpful just data point for kind of where this is at for the overall space.
Yeah, I mean, I think you make some good points, right? I think a lot of times performance advertisers, last click, last touch point is just so convenient, right? It's just kind of like the reporting goes against that. You look at the lifetime value against that. But, I think as we kind of evolve, we're starting to realize that, most of the times I don't see one ad and I'm like, okay, that's enough for me to make a decision. Sometimes I see like an ad here and then I see another ad there and I'm like, okay, now I have to try this. I have to go and figure out why is this thing in my face repeatedly, and I go in and execute against it. And I think that just kind of highlights the fact that you have to touch different screens, different environments, different experiences. And all those things kind of come together. And I think performance advertisers are going to be tasked with not just like, all my clicks are coming from here, but it's like, how am I stringing together? How am I working with my brand side? Or is brand and performance all coming together? Because, in a 15-second ad, I can actually pull off both. I think those are the questions that we're kind of realizing that our customers are kind of being forced into the same room, similar to just how we're dealing with UA managers working in the same room as lifecycle marketers and retention managers, and they're trying to figure out how is our data that's currently living in silos coming together, and can our data actually help each other? Is your platform and my platform communicating with each other? And realistically, the more data that I have is how I'm going to be able to make better decisions across the funnel.
So we're coming up on our last 15 minutes here. I know these are some pretty dense topics, so really appreciate you guys, especially early in the morning. So thank you guys for hopefully everyone's caffeinated enough, and it's been insightful and useful. There's going to be time for questions. We didn't know how many there would be, so if there are some, please have them ready. We'll get to a funner kind of go forward question before we get to that. So I think it's always nice to think about the future. 2026 is right around the corner. We're in Q4, so let's think about where this is headed with CTV and driving performance on mobile outcomes. Where do you think we're at for this next year? Yeah,
I mean, I think I'm curious to know from the audience first is just like, I mentioned like 3 measurement tactics. I mean, who's using like this attribution? Like show of hands, like who's using attribution in their day-to-day to figure out what's actually working for them? Which, good. What about incrementality? Has anyone started testing incrementality? Okay. MMM? Okay. All right. No, this is good to know. I mean, I think what happens is there's this kind of split across the room about how they're addressing it. And I think my take on it is incrementality is definitely going to take off a lot more. It just makes sense to kind of incorporate that just because the user journey is getting more and more complex. I think the other aspect of this is actually also understanding the identity resolution that we're going to have to deal with. It used to be a lot of mobile to mobile, and you're just kind of looking at that. But as we kind of evolve into this cross-screen environment, you're actually going to see a lot more identity resolution products that are helping bridge together all the different screens within a household and make sense of it. So all the brands that you're planning on working with is actually going to play a big factor in this. I mean, I'm working with some digital out-of-home billboards that are even being geo-based and trying to loop that in from actual, direct response performance point of view to understand, which devices we're walking through this screen in a terminal, driving the car across the screen. All that's coming together, and we're actually leaning into a lot of identity resolutions to help answer that and solve for that. What about you?
Awesome. Yeah, those are great. So I'd say one more tactical, one more, fun or strategic maybe. The first is added signals to help increase these attribution windows. Long term, from where we're at, we're not going to survive if we can't get a little more breathing room in how this is measured. I think similar to the audience targeting I was saying earlier, and walking through all the data that we have that can inform an audience target relative to the usual suspects. We're working on that for measurement, and so there's a lot of data that we have now that shows the install. Only about 20% of installs happen within the first 1 hour or so, which is what we get with some really heavy performance advertisers. A lot of it may happen day 2, day 3, and we need to show that with data. We need to show that with all kinds of thought leadership and whatnot. It's going to take time. But I'm hoping with more and more education and data points, we'll have more signal to increase our windows, which will help us increase performance. That's one. On the more strategic or fun side, being a device manufacturer, there's a lot of ways this can go with the remote and the ad units themselves. So on the remote, there's some early experimentation on clickable shopping experiences, buy now, things like that. It may sound like a little forward-leaning from where we're at, but the stuff moves quick. So I think it could be a conversion vehicle straight from your remote one day. If you log into your TV and you have a profile and you have all your paid data and all that loaded up, I think that could come. And Samsung's working on a few of those things within TV Plus to have shoppable channels. I think that's one. A second is interactive TV ads. And so there's a lot of innovation happening here. You guys probably have seen pause ads. That was an early thing that's rolled out. TV Plus has what's called game breaks, which is, it kind of took a call from mobile on this, where you play a game during the ad break instead of watching a 15 or a 30, and you get the whole ad break itself. It could be, it says like, this ad break's brought to you by your advertiser. And then it's like all those games you play at like a bar. It's like a trivia game, or a picture goes from like opaque to clear. We have like 6 or 7 different games. And I think there's a good demand for users to think beyond the 15 and 30 and try something a little more engaging. And then you're open. And that one, going to something you said earlier, this really starts to get into brand formats, where you're increasing recall and consideration and all those brand metrics, and we can start to show those things, but can also track the outcome because we add the AppsFlyer integration. So we're doing a lot of things with more interactive TV units. So I think it's early days, but a lot of room for growth on both those areas.
Switch to questions.
Yeah. Any questions for us, guys?
Anyone? Audience? No?
We answered them all.
Yeah, they really nailed it. Oh, we got one.
How you doing, guys? Dan Greskovic from Samsung. Good to see you, Ryan. What are some of the pain points that your clients are seeing currently in the space that you're definitely top of mind you guys are working to solve right now?
Want to go first? Go
ahead.
All right. Sure. I think first piece is getting started, right, and getting them to consider CTV, either in one or two situations. Either they are running with a Vibe, a TV Scientific, another partner, and we're being added, or it's brand new, and you're having to do a lot of this education, the topics we covered today. And, you're happy to do it, but you want it to lead to an outcome, right? There's a TV show coined a concept called brain drain, and sometimes you feel like that happens, where they ask you all these questions, and then it doesn't lead to anything, which is not fun. I'd say that's one. The earlier topic on the click-based channels, the social channels versus adding CTV, that's why 95% of the money is still in the click-based channels. We need to evolve our measurement standards to have more of that pie. We're performing well, but it just impacts how much you can spend per day, how much you can grow these accounts, because a lot of the credit goes to the last touch guys. So I'd say the look-back windows, getting started, believe it or not, too, the creative itself has been a challenge. The creative is relatively easy to be on a Samsung Smart TV. It's just a display unit, but it's not a typical IAB size. So and I'm hoping with AI and things like that, it becomes easier to make these kind of ad units quicker. But some people want to launch quickly, and then they don't have the capabilities to make really, you want these things to be very obvious. You want it to be download now, right? Or have a promotion, or like some kind of maybe way of tracking it with a promo code or things like that. Anything that you can make it really obvious that this is a mobile app, because for the most part, this has been branding, right? It's been a new car or a new TV show. You didn't really have to have a whole lot of call to action. You were just trying to have a really, nice branding unit. So there's work to be done to make these ad units more, DR oriented, and that takes custom creative. So that's another challenge that we didn't anticipate that we're trying to address.
I mean, I actually think fact that TV is programmatic actually makes it seem like you should actually not be so stressed about the creative. I think back in the day it was like, okay, I'm buying this slot, it's gonna cost me like how much money? And like I really had to tune this and get this right. And now you're like, well, I could pump out like 50 creatives, do all these variations, do all this programmatic testing, figure out what actually works before I start shifting my budget. So like, I think don't get stuck up on the creative piece. Pump them out, try out all the different call to actions and figure out which one actually works and then just optimize that before it gets fatigued and then switch and iterate. I think that's kind of the mindset that people need to be in. I think in addition to that, just kind of answering your question, I think what was an interesting keyword that I've kind of heard from marketers is cannibalization. They're spending all this budget in their existing partners, and they're asking them, well, if I add this partner, is it going to cannibalize my existing reach? And is it going to just reach the same audiences that I'm currently reaching? And I think that is a misconception. I think those people are very caught up in like this last touch point of view, and they're like, oh, these are just going to be assists that drove to my last touch. But I think that's where incrementality really comes into the picture. Like you should really be running incrementality testing to validate, well, actually it's not. It's actually helping me drive better users, better customers. And the reality is that I think we all believe that we need more than one ad to drive real outcomes from our customers. And so what happens is don't look at it from last touch. Think about, well, how many ads does a customer actually need before they actually execute and convert on you? And are you actually then leveraging concepts of like retargeting ad exposures? A lot of people do retargeting when they're already a customer, but what about when they've already gotten that first reach, or maybe they visited your website but they didn't actually convert? How are you retargeting those customers when they're in the consideration funnel, whereas post-conversion?
Yeah, it's really good. So just to build off a couple of those things, how we kind of tackle some of those objections. The average Samsung Smart TV owner is about 38 to 41. And so when you think about who you reach on social, we're incremental to that. Social is generally in the early 20s, right? So that's a incremental audience. Second is our inventory isn't programmatically available in third-party DSPs. So this isn't places you're running when you're running in your tried and true Mountains or Simplifies or whatever DSPs these guys might be using, Trade Desk. So you can approach it from that way, and that's one. And what was the second piece that you were just ending with?
The cannibalization.
Cannibalization. Yeah, that's always a challenging one. But again, if you show the wider view of incrementality and zooming out that $1 in, $1 out isn't as effective as it continually has been, then they start to come around and understand they need to try new things. They need to get to new channels. These are common topics, though, that you should feel comfortable talking about, because there isn't a silver bullet to these just yet.
We got time for one more, in case anyone has
one more if someone wants one. We got one more. All right, you're not going to save me again. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Well done.